Hi, welcome to episode 46, Hollywood Breaks. This week we discuss the blockbuster hit Black Widow. What a great film that was. But also just the evolution of filmmaking. What's really happening in our industry? Is this Sun Valley Summit that's taking place, this House of Cards kind of scene that takes place in Sun Valley every year, going to solve the problems that we need to? Or are we seeing a possible evolution of filmmakers and artists that are rebelling? So I went to the movies this weekend, and we saw Black Widow, by the way. Super great movie.
Nice.
Loved it.
Oh, great.
But as I was standing in line for the concession stand, I had to get the extra large version of this because
is that a small or an extra large?
This is the small. This is only the size of your head.
Of course.
So it's only
because the bucket is the extra large.
But I saw this cup, and I'm like, I gotta get this cup because it says, so right now what is it? It's July 2021.
Yes.
And it says promptly, Tom Cruise, Top Gun.
Nice.
June 2020, right there on the cup, man. These guys have been holding on this cup for over a year, and that film is still not released.
They gotta clear out all the stuff. They have to just get it out of there.
It's just a bunch of garbage.
Clean out all the supplies that have been sitting in the back room for the last
They're
year.
Still promoting this film. It was supposed to be released over a year ago. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, well, it's coming out in November now. And I forgot to tell you this, Tim. I have it on very good authority, although I can't reveal who because, of course, this is Hollywood Breaks, and we don't reveal our secrets.
Right.
Or who provides us with our secrets. That is a very good movie.
Oh, really?
Worth seeing in the theater. So...
Ooh.
If that might excite your appetite even more,
yeah.
Given the fact that you're amped as am I to see the movie in theaters. But I have it on good authority. It's a great cinematic experience.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, when's the release date? Do we have an actual release date?
I think it's in November. I think it's November, if I'm not mistaken.
I have a feeling that Black Widow this weekend helped kind of give some confidence back to the theaters, right? Because by the way, it is a very good movie. I thought they did a great job. Beats the hell out of Wonder Woman, whatever they try to do there with trying to make women into
Wonder
superheroes.
Woman.
This is in a very interesting way. They obviously a female superhero character, but they didn't say it out loud. You know what I mean? Like she just was a superhero. Oh, like the first Wonder Woman did a good job with that too. And that's what makes it exciting. That's what made it relevant. And then a lot of fun. It is too long of an exposition at the very beginning. Like I think we could have trimmed down the beginning a little bit. But I loved that. It was my kid's 16th birthday, and I took 10 boys to see this movie. Wow. So figure that's the... Either they went there because they love Marvel, or they like it because it's a woman. It's like really beautiful women,
attractive women.
Just like
they're about that age.
Yeah, exactly. No, Dad, I want to go to see Black Widow with my friends.
Right,
but pretty fun. But great box office open. I think they 80 million for opening weekend.
Yeah, I mean, granted, and I'm gonna again play the role of the somewhat pessimist, as what I often do on this podcast, but. They started out the weekend estimating around, well, let's back up here. So Disney estimated about 75 million, which is they always lowball because they want to go, obviously they don't want to disappoint the numbers. So they say, oh, well, we're anticipating 75. By Friday night, early Saturday morning, everyone was saying, oh, this could go 90 plus. This could be huge. And then by Sunday, it had dropped back down to 80 million. So the interesting part about that is you saw around a 40 to 41% drop from Friday to Saturday, which you don't typically see. It's because typically Thursday night into Friday night are like the diehards. So those are like your Marvel super fans who will always go no matter what to see the movie because they don't want FOMO. They want to be able to go home and type in their computer and tell everyone on their little blog how great Black Widow was or how not great it was. And then usually on Saturday and Sunday, you have sort of like the families or someone who's like, okay, let's go to a movie. Where do we want to see? Oh, Black Widow's out. Okay, let's go see that. But apparently that did not happen. Now, you could argue that the reason that was because it's also playing at home at the same time. So it's really hard to guess what exactly the numbers are there. However, I will say that on Monday, this morning, Disney actually released late yesterday, they actually released a very comprehensive breakdown of what it made globally. That includes international, domestic, and on Disney Plus. So this will be as far as I know, this is the first time they've ever done this. Now, the caveat is there's no way for us to verify whether or not their numbers are accurate and how they measure who watched it. Is it the Netflix 2 minutes or is it some other measure that they use? We don't know. We don't know that. And we can't verify it. There's no way to verify it because they're just presenting it. So overall, yeah, I think it did fairly well.
But what's the combined? Wasn't it like 140 or something like that combined?
For the entire weekend, it's 250 million worldwide.
Wow.
And that broke out.
That beat F9.
It broke out to 80 domestic, 78 international, and over 60 in Disney Plus Premier Access. So that's their breakout globally. Now that's globally. I don't know how much. Obviously, I think that spend on the 60 million for Disney Plus skews more domestic than international because I don't know how many territories Disney Plus has rolled out to yet. But it's still an impressive number.
What's interesting,
but again, there's no way to verify it. And then, as I said, this is on the lower end of Marvel movies. Like typically, a Marvel movie blasts past 100 million or whatever. And then this is on a lower end. It's still good, especially given the pandemic that, we're still kind of sort of in, not really, but we haven't necessarily pulled ourselves out of it completely. So it's still a decent number. But again, it goes to the sense that, okay, well, what does this mean for the future? Because it's still the ongoing question here.
Well, to me, the interesting number is the $60 million on VOD. Because I would think like in the previous model, you had your, we'll say $140 million open weekend, which they combined the two together and you have a $140 million open weekend. But then you had a VOD release in the future, and that brings in another 40 to 50 million. And here, if you ask me, that $60 million Disney Plus number really is what they're taking from the theaters. That's the obvious of like, this was old theater money that we're now taking on Disney Plus. But they're also taking it from themselves because they're missing that second time release when they could have made another 20, 30, 40 million on second release, and they're not going to do it. Because if I'm going to watch it Disney Plus on the first round, I'm not watching it on Disney Plus again, right? Especially if the way the Disney Plus model works, that once you get past the premium time, it's open and available at no cost. Yeah. So it doesn't hurt the subscription-based part of it, but I think that 60 million, that's the obvious target that was once theater money that doesn't show up on the box office now. Yeah. So interesting time for that.
I think that's definitely a thing that'll. I mean, we have CinemaCon coming up at the end of August, which is when all the exhibitors and distributors get together and present. The distributors present their upcoming slate to the exhibitors. So it'll be interesting to see, because in the last few years it's sort of been this, glasses half full, sort of rose-colored glasses mantra of like, Netflix is great. It's, it's another partner that we have who wants to make movies. It's an awesome opportunity. And nobody was seeing the writing on the wall. Like, this is not good for the business as a whole.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if that's a part of the conversation. Because the other part of this sort of this past weekend, the weekend of first, if you will, is where we had Kareem Daniel, who's the chairman of the entertainment media distribution division of Disney, who actually came out and was part of the release, which that's the first that's happened. And Alan Bergman, who's the chairman of Disney Content Studios. God, that's a terrible Disney Studios.
You hate saying that, don't you? It's like,
I hate saying that. It just sounds so. Ugh. Anyway, he was second billed, which that's not typically how it usually goes. Usually, it's you have the head of distribution from the theater of the studio side, and then you have either the chairman or the producers or a combination thereof. But this was really Kareem's first step forward in saying, this validates what Disney has been doing over the course of the last year. So,
Sure.
my big question is, what does this mean in terms, Bob II has said this is just temporary because of the pandemic. But if they're running this kind of numbers, it'll be interesting to see how Wall Street reacts to it. Whether or not they're going to be like, well, then you just got to keep doing this because this obviously works. Because that's $60 million right in your pocket. You're not splitting that with anybody. It's right in the pocket. So,
Right.
yes, it's being pulled from the theaters, but then it's going right into the pocket, which means the shareholders are going to be like, ooh, that's $60 million that's coming directly to us and my investment in this company. So again, that's going to be interesting because I think Bob Chapek is going to have some issues with saying, oh, this is just a temporary pandemic thing. Because if that's the kind of numbers they're going to start pulling in, then that's going to make the pullback even more difficult.
You can hear the reaction though. Like, I think the whole antitrust thing that Biden's doing is trying to play the other side of this conversation too, because you can hear the reaction of, should a studio player be able to control this thing from beginning to end? And the Paramount decree, which we talked about it plenty of times in the last year, that was reversed just barely over a year ago now. And now it's getting its first adversary of saying, hey, maybe just making the film straight onto your own platform, keeping all the money yourself, and the lack of competition or lack of other revenue streams that these studios are able to kind of take away from, downstream from the release. Like, it's interesting. It's interesting to see how we're all kind of wondering and reacting to what's there. My vote was counted by paying the theater tickets and going there and sitting and watching it. It's truly a way better experience than watching at home.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of power and might happening, even just with what Amazon's doing with MGM. Like, all the Wall Street bets are even more like, let's keep this momentum going and keep everything on a streaming platforms and not feed things downstream. So there's kind of a response that's happening right now. I'd be curious how much this Biden pushback's going to have.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because the industry itself was not directly attacked, but directly mentioned in the orders. It was like railroads, healthcare, the obvious
transportation
industries that sort of have that somewhat governmental supervision happening.
But tech was more one of the
tech was definitely involved, and I think that's where Amazon, the GAFAs of the world, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, that's where they're more involved. And I think it's interesting because this week was the return of Sun Valley Conference, which, for those of our lovely listeners who don't know what this is, it's a conference with all the big media and entertainment moguls who get together. They go out to Sun Valley, Idaho, which is this small, isolated resort. It's sponsored by this investment group. And all the big wigs come together. It's where the AOL Time Warner merger started. I believe it's where the AT&T Time Warner merger talks started. So that's where all this it sort of happens. And there obviously the big talk was Discovery, Warner Brothers, and David Zaslav came out and said, we're not done yet. We still want to do more. And then you had obviously Sherry Redstone's a topic of interest because of CBS Viacom and what they're going to do, and Brian Robertson Comcast, what are they going to do next? There's a lot of that's sort of what comes out of this. And then on Friday you had all these announcements that like, oh wait, I want Joe Biden saying I want the FTC and the Justice Department to take harder looks at merger. And at the same time, we hear that FTC has won supervision of the Amazon MGM merger, basically signaling that it's going to take longer than I think Amazon is going to want it to before that merger is either approved or potentially disapproved, which would be an interesting case study. And on top of all that, you have Barry Diller, who has had his time in the studio world. He worked at Paramount Fox at any given time. He hasn't worked at a studio in like 20 years or so, or maybe longer.
QVC
he came out and said,
Diller.
I'm sorry?
Wasn't the QVC guy too? Wasn't he the...
He was QVC. He got involved in tech. He just built an island in New York that people can go walk on or something. I don't know. But he...
Which I've been there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but he came out and just said the movie industry as we know it is dead. And that's one point of view. It could be accurate. I still am not convinced that I think the movie industry is changing, and there are, as we've talked a lot about in this podcast, there are a lot of changes that have happened over the last year that were good, and that had been discussed for the last 10 years or so, but finally got pushed to the fore because they had to be. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you're unsure of where the future is going to go. And this is not an industry that makes changes easily. It does not necessarily have leadership at this moment who is willing to make change and be leaders of change. So that's sort of the
leaders are just getting sucked into these big contracts too, as we Bill Burrs of the world, like, oh, never mind, I'll just join them. Like, forget.
I'll just go to Netflix. I'll stop fighting it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, it goes to the eternal question, and I think at some point someone is going to have to tackle this and figure out and define what is a movie. What is it anymore? And we had comments from Stephen Dorff this past week on an interview he gave to The Independent, which was the basic gist of it is just there's so much content out there. We don't know what's what. It's just one giant cluster bleep that we don't really know what's what, what's where, what's this, what's that. I mean, and ultimately
we could not agree with him more. That is exactly what it is. It's a big.
Well, that's what we've been saying for the last year, and
I think he's been watching our podcasts and knows.
Yeah. To be fair, he did start out by attacking Scarlett Johansson and say, "I feel bad for her. She's doing those crappy Marvel movies." I mean, obviously that was to get attention, and we know that there are a lot of people who have issue with Marvel movies, which is all well and good. But at a certain point, someone's going to have to answer what a movie is. And, we've seen that the Academy of Motion Picture Art and Sciences, which ideally would be the group to answer the question, and they haven't really answered it. They're just basically like, oh, yeah, Netflix, you just released a movie for a week and we're good. That's a movie. Okay, well, what if Lifetime decides to, or Hallmark says, hey, let's get in the Oscar game. Let's release my movie for a week in the theaters. Then I can qualify for... I'm considered a movie now, right? Because that's what you told Netflix is a movie. If they release it in LA, I think it is, for a week or two.
But I'm not really sure. Like The Weekend Guest is going to make the Oscars or whatever.
Well, I totally get it. That's maybe not necessarily. But my point is,
although from last year's contenders. I'm pretty sure The Weekend Guest would have done a pretty good job.
Yeah, it probably would have at least been entertaining.
Yeah, if they would have pooped in a bucket during that Hallmark movie, they would have totally.
Then it would have been all good. But at a certain point, somebody has to answer that question. Like, what is a movie? Because we don't know anymore. Now it's all just content. And the more and more, I see what's on every platform and trying to keep up with it all, it's just... I'm starting to come down to like what Martin Scorsese was talking about in his interview, where he's just like, it's all just content. Like, what does that mean? It's such a amorphous phrase that can include so much. And it's like, when you have like a classic studio like the Walt Disney Studios just talking about Disney Studios content. And it's like, okay, it's just, I don't know. It's tough for me to come at this from a very positive perspective. Having worked in the industry for so long and knowing sort of the people who make these decisions, I don't know. Like, it's who is a defender of the faith, if you will? Like, who is defending the film-going, theatrical-going experience right now? Right now, the only person who's really stuck his neck out is Jim Giannopoulos with Quiet Place 2. Despite all the pressure he was getting from the big wigs at Viacom, he stuck to his guns and said, no, we're releasing this in theaters. And he's one of the few people who's actually done that. Where Disney's like, oh, we're just going to play it by ear. This is, and then Warner Brothers is like, here, HBO Max, take our entire slate. So,
I guess my expectation is there's going to be some evolution of how we're going to tell a story, the technology behind that story, and then the filmmaker wanted to get into the game, what they're going to do differently, and then the different deals they're going to make, right? I mean, my hope is that when it comes down to like the resource part of this game, there's going to be either a discovery or a holdout, and the filmmakers are going to say, I'm not going to just make content. Like, the actors and actresses say, like, please don't sign me up for another crappy Netflix movie. Just because you're paying my bills doesn't mean I should be putting on a fake superhero outfit. Oscar award-winning actors should not be playing Melissa McCarthy's sidekick on a fake superhero 1 hour Netflix, quote unquote film. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And these show.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not like these things are not playing themselves out the way that we'll say a professional career should. And that's the directors and the writers and the actors. Like, they're all just being commoditized. So go back to my expectation is there's going to be some evolution either in how we do it. So then the theater experience makes sense again, and people are going to it because there's going to be a certain experience, or the talent themselves will hold out.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who are eager beavers for money. So I don't
there
know
are
if
unions.
you throw enough.
I mean, that's what the writers
I know,
guild,
but I don't know if the
unions
don't have enough pull. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. I mean, you're right. It's definitely one of those things where it's going to have to adjust. But in a lot of the conversations I have with some of my clients, the first conversation I have is like, well, where do you want this to be? Like, what is your vision for this film? Is your vision that it just gets in front of an audience no matter where they are? Okay, great. Then let's talk about streamers and what streamer you think might be right for it. But if you're truly committed to a theatrical experience, then let's attack that. Let's go for that. Because if that's how you vision this film being seen and experienced, then that's a different ballgame. And I don't know if there are filmmakers out there right now, because I think the beauty of Netflix at the time when they first started was they would just give you a pile of money and say, go shoot your dream. And come back and see us in 6 months when it's done, and we'll put it on the platform. And that was like a dream come true for a lot of filmmakers, Martin Scorsese included, who had been wanting to make The Irishman for years, and no studio would touch it with a 10-foot pole because it was way too expensive. But if you back up a few years, and the reason I bring this up is because this past year, I think, was the 20th anniversary of Lord of the Rings, and Deadline ran an article about how that all came together. And fast forward 20 years, and can you imagine a Peter Jackson? He probably wouldn't even gone to New Line. He would just gone to Netflix and said, here's what I got. Give me the money. And they'd have given it to him. Now, can you imagine that experience on a small screen like at home versus in a theater? It'd have been a totally different experience. And quite frankly, not nearly as good. So, but that's sort of the economy that we're currently dealing with right now.
But
where it's.
I'll say this, though, but I think that what he did in the Lord of the Rings movies was an evolution of filmmaking, too, right? Where he shot the series all at once. He understood the big picture stuff. He basically hired a cast and crew for 5 years to keep the thing going. And that evolution created an opportunity for theaters, filmmakers, storytellers to get together and do this. Mm-hmm. I think what Stephen Dorff is basically, vocalizing is some of my hope here, is that he's basically calling BS. He's saying, this is a bunch of garbage. Like let's stop doing this dumb crap and go back to the craft that we have. Like, I wish it was somebody of higher standard than Stephen Dorff. I mean, great guy, great career, but he's not. He's not the
it would be
biggest
nice
voices.
if a Rauch came out and said that, or I'm sorry, Dwayne Johnson, or if Christopher Pratt, or even Scarlett Johansson, or somebody,
Clooney.
or George Clooney came out and said, "Listen, we got to get back to the basics here. Like, we can't just be shooting content for the sake of content," which is really what's happening right now. It's just content for the sake of something to drive subs and reduce churn. Yeah. That's essentially what we're dealing with. And one thing I will say about The Lord of the Rings, that was actually not Peter Jackson's idea to shoot them all at once. That was actually Bob Shaye's idea. Peter Jackson came and said, I just want to shoot one. And Bob Shaye's like, well, that's dumb. Let's just shoot all three.
Brilliant move.
So Peter Jackson's like, okay, let's do it. But you're not, again, it's just, I don't know if you're going to see that kind of thing now. And now Netflix, of course, is starting to act more like a traditional studio, giving more notes. They're taking pitches. Yeah. It's not just, here's a script, let's go make it. I mean, I'm sure there's still elements of that, but I think it's become more of a controlled experience versus what it was when they first started, where it was just throwing money at whoever was interested. So again, I wish, I echo your sentiments that I wish there was somebody who would just stand up and say, look, we need to get back to basics. We need to slow the roll. Let's start defining what really a theatrical film is, and let's get back to that. And yes, there's going to be Marvel movies, but eventually that tide's going to run out. And where do we go from there? And there's an entire global audience of movie lovers and movie goers who are essentially being kind of ignored and just told, hey, just watch it on TV. And listen, there will be people that'll do that because it's the convenience factor. There are people who just say, okay, I'll watch Black Widow. But there's no, I can't imagine. I go to my childhood. I can't imagine watching Jurassic Park on a small screen. I mean, you can't tell me watching a brontosaurus walk up, that first scene when you first get a full shot of a dinosaur jumping up and trying to eat the tree, and you have Sam Neill and Laura Dern just looking like basically playing the role of the audience, being like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You can't imagine seeing that on a small screen and being like, wow, that's so
we
great.
do this often, but I'll do this again here too. But just rewind yourself back to what the blockbuster evolution really was, right? So before Jaws and Close Encounters and Star Wars and what have you, because again, like first Star Wars, probably like you and I, there was one theater that was huge, had, I don't know what, had 600, 700 seats in it or whatever, and we'd wait in line for the showing, and then we'd go watch that one Star Wars moment or whatever. But the blockbuster evolution that took place gave birth to the multiplex, right? So then mid 80s, early 90s, when there was a large film that took place, there was a showtime at 7, 7:15, 7:30, 7:45, something. Like Batman, it was like they took over 15 of the 22 theaters in the multiplex, and the blockbuster thing was able to take place. These huge opening weekends are possible. The evolution that we have right now is just there's another need for a score. We're no longer in the blockbuster world. We're not going to be able to look at the scorecard the same way. We have OTT platforms and theaters combining the numbers somehow. But this new scorecard, which is still not yet defined, is what's going to give us that credibility to get to, hey, once we know how to keep score, this movie is a better movie than that movie. Right now, all the scorecards are hidden, so it's just content. It's basically like, hey, this stuff's no one's business. Just go make me any piece of garbage, and as long as it fills up an hour and a half of someone's time, cool, my subscriptions are being fulfilled.
Yeah, you're right. I'd agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, but I also think what Richard Rushfield has said since the beginning of the pandemic, this is a business of hits. And yes, we have to define what a hit is and what that means, but it still requires there to be hits. And
Tomorrow War was a big hit. I mean, it's the best movie ever, right? I mean, I read
according
it.
to Amazon and Chris Pratt, yeah, it is.
Right.
I mean,
they had like 3 million people watching it, Keith. I mean, they had 1/10 of a viewing audience of Friends watching Tomorrow War. It's clearly a gigantic hit.
Okay. Yeah, well, again, so that's a great case in point. So if you look at the numbers that were released now, there's a firm who sort of does the tracking, and I'm going to pull it up right now so I don't mess up the numbers. The firm that does it is called Soundbot TV, and I guess they track like 3 million smart TVs, and they base on if you watch 5 minutes or more of a particular film. So 2.41 million households according to Samba watched Tomorrow War. Now to put that in context, Tom Clancy's Without Remorse was 2.3, and Borat's subsequent movie film was 1.6 over 3 days, according to this tracker. So that kind of gives it context. Now, according to Amazon, both those movies were a hit.
Yeah, 2 million.
Fine.
2 million people, or 2 million households.
I'm not arguing with you. I agree. Yeah. That to me doesn't feel like a hit. And the other thing is,
again, Friends, I think, was 30 million a week.
30 million
We're talking about 2 million for a film.
Well, again, it's just... Well, listen, it's also about controlling the narrative. And right now, like, Chris Pratt was on Instagram on Monday morning. Thank you, everyone, for making Tomorrow War the greatest film in streaming history. I'm like, okay, great. Well, is that what it means? Because nobody I know was talking about it. I don't remember, my wife's Facebook blowing up with, go see Tomorrow War. Like, so... I don't know if it was a hit, but we never know because the streamers are allowed to be cagey. Yeah. And as I've said before, until more, investors, talent, everyone starts demanding more transparency, then this is the game we're going to play. Like, Tomorrow War is going to be a hit, and that's the end of it.
Okay,
Oh,
so
we're developing a sequel because it was such a hit. Well, how the heck do we know that?
I think our mandate from coming off of this episode is you and I need to create a scorecard. That's basically it.
I like
It can't be Rotten Tomatoes or thumbs or up or thumbs down. Maybe it'll just be like how many old, theater.
How many of those can you drink while sitting?
How many
watching
Top Gun
this film?
June 2020 things can you drink in a? If you've not consumed 27, what was probably just 45 ounces of fluid, then you did not watch a film. That's the way the.
If anyone from Paramount is watching this, you might want to have your in-theater people reach out and switch
update
out
those.
cups, maybe.
This is Cinemark.
Because you're going to create a lot of confusion. Wait, Top Gun already came out? What?
Yeah.
If anything, the other thing is it could be
out the little thing right there.
It could be a brilliant subterfuge campaign because if you think about the customer experience, like you look at that, the thing about the conversation we had pre-recording, you basically showed it to. Well, we might have had this when we were recording, but you showed it to me and you innocently said, "When does it come out?"
Yeah, when does it come out?
So you're going to go home and you're like, wait a minute, is Top Gun Maverick already out? And then you're going to oh, wait, it's in November. Oh, I'm going to mark that in my calendar.
This is a perfect pandemic moment, by the way, because as I looked at this thing, I thought to myself, wait, did it come out? Did I see it yet? And I can't remember the date, the time, or my experience for the last 18 months. So this was like, wait a second. And I still don't have any clear information.
You've lost track of time.
It's exactly how we all feel.
What day of the week is it?
So you and I need to create a scorecard that is a little bit more clear. We got to get rid of some of this BS of like, we should compare 2 million households to 30 million households and say, no, it's a failure. We can easily say that, right? Or be able to recognize 140 million or I guess 215 million worldwide in an opening weekend. That's pretty good. Like, sure, let's not compare to the blockbuster age of Batman Returns or whatever.
Or pre-pandemic, really.
Yeah.
You can't really compare pre-pandemic either.
No, we need a scorecard for the new evolution of films. And I'm going to say films, I'm not going to say content. We're going to say a scorecard for the new evolution of film. And it's going to have sippy cups and Tom Cruise's face on it. This will actually be this would be the model of the award that we're going to give people at the award show.
It's like the MTV Movie Award popcorn. That's like it'll be a giant small cup from a movie.
We'll be at the Beverly Hilton handing out these little suckers right here.
In the ballroom. Yeah, it's a great ballroom.
Gotta get the ballroom.
Show up.
That's right.
In the ballroom.
Mike Douglas. Right there at Mike Douglas's old stage.
Oh, good times.
All right, good to see you. Hey, by the way, we should tell people this was released a few days late because you and I are traveling. Welcome back to Maine. It's good to see your old tromping ground.
I'm back on my movie set.
This is where Hollywood Breaks got started, right there in that little
right here in this
room.
little office is where the dream began. And I'm debating whether or not my internet signal would be strong enough because I'd really love to give our viewers sort of a taste of Maine and give it the true backdrop of what I look at every day when I wake up in the morning. Yeah. But I don't know if the internet connection will be strong enough. But I'm going to test it to see because maybe next week you'll get a fuller view of the beauty.
That'd be great.
Maine. So.
And your father-in-law, does he think it's legitimate now that you've been doing it for a year? Or does he be like, what the hell are you still doing in my office?
He's coming around. Yeah, I think he's coming around. He still doesn't quite get it, but I think he's getting there. He kind of
What's he doing up there in my office? I need my office back.
Yeah, what's he doing? Well, actually, my in-laws have another place that they are currently at while we are here. So my family and I basically have taken over this
that's good.
establishment for the few weeks that we're going to be here. So he's not outside the door staring at me right now telling me to get out because he's got a conference call in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's a bonus.
Come on.
Yeah, it's legit now. It's legit. I'm not going to get kicked out anytime soon.
That's great. I love it. Well, welcome to Maine. It's good to have you there. It would be cool to have a bigger view. I want you eating lobster at some point while we're doing one of these.
I could do that. We're talking about when we're going to have lobster, so maybe I could save a shell or record a live lobster and have one just hold one up so when you kind of look at what they look like before you throw them in the pot.
Wait, when do you leave there? Maybe I need to come visit you. We can be side by side.
Well, I'm here for a while, Tim. I'm here till the end of August.
All right, I'll put you on my schedule.
Oh, great.
I have a wedding at the beginning of August, but I'll find my way.
You can't pull a classic Tim Thompson and roll in the door and say, "Hey, I'm right outside."
Why not?
No, you can't pull that on me. You got to give me at least a week notice.
I showed up in Moldova one day. I'm like, Lydia, what are we doing?
No, you got to give me at least a week notice. You got to give me at least a
1 week notice. That way your father-in-law can clear out the office. What's this guy, another podcaster? What's going on?
Oh, great. Just what we need.
You guys know how to sell insurance at all? Because I can get you some real jobs.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend. And thank you, Lydia, from behind the scenes, keeping us going and on track as much as possible. Appreciate you. Connor, for all the help and research that you do. Keep these episodes coming. And for our fans who are asking for it, we were a few days late and we were getting hit up on YouTube with all these requests. So it's great to have you part of it. Please, if you have not yet subscribe to it on your favorite platform. What do you got for me?
I was just going to remind everyone that our favorite Hollywood breaker, Robin Geisen, will be returning to the podcast on Friday. So stay tuned.